In railway engineering, we study about railway track, ballast and formation, track fastenings, points and crossings, the geometric design of railway tracks, and the signals and interlocking. Now let's see the concept behind railway engineering by answering some 10 questions that can be asked in examinations. The first question is, which one of the following signals is provided beyond the trailing points and switches in a railway yard? There are many types of signals in railways. So what is that signal provided beyond the trailing points and switches in a railway yard? So option A repeater, option B advance, option C departure, option D routing signal. So what is the signal provided beyond the trailing points and switches in a railway yard? Correct answer is advanced signal. Now let's see more about signal types. So there is one signal called departure signals, and that signal is used to control the dispatch of trains from the stations. So to control what are the trains has to be dispatched, that is controlled by using departure signals from the station yards. And there are two types of departure signals. One is starter and one is advanced starter. And advanced starter is located beyond the trailing points and switches. Switches are nothing but the turnouts. The switches are provided at the turnouts uh, by which the train will be directed in the correct direction. Whether it has to be left turn, or it has to be moving in the main track, or it has to be moved in a branch track. So whichever is the correct one, in the turnouts we have to provide the switches. And routing signals are provided at the point of diversion, and routing signals are nothing but the signals which helps to route the uh, train to get the correct direction. This is also some type of uh, turnout. This is also some type of signal located in turnouts. So at the point of diversion, this is the point of diversion. So at the point of diversion, routing signals are provided, and repeating signals are nothing but uh, it's a signal when driver's vision gets obstructed due to some objects between it. So when driver's vision gets obstructed, we use repeating signals. Calling on signals, why when train stops with home signal. So home signal indication when the train stops permits train to proceed cautiously by keeping this signal arm at proceed position. So what is proceed position in a semaphore? Actually this how semaphore looks like this only. So if the semaphore is like this, then it means stop position. When both the arms are lowered, then that means proceed position. So in the proceed position, single arm at proceed position means only this arm gets lowered and this arm is horizontal. So this is how calling on signal works. And shunting signals is nothing but you can see in this diagram, in this photo figure. Shunting signals are disk signals for shunting operations. When the red line is horizontal, that means it indicates stop. When the red horizontal line is 45 degree, so that means it shows proceed. And signals can be classified based on functional, based on location. Based on functional, it can be semaphore, disk, or shunting signals. It can be color light, it can be point signals. Nowadays color light signals are used, red, green, amber. So that color light signals are used mostly. These semaphore, disk, point are rarely used, but disk signals or shunting signals are used for railway track conditions. And location based reception, departure, shunting, routing. So these are the types of signals based on functional and based on locational. Now let's see second question. Composite sleeper index is employed to determine option A sleeper density requirement, option B number of fixtures required for certain type of sleeper, option C durability of sleeper, option D mechanical strength of wooden sleeper. So what is the function, or what is determined using Composite Sleeper Index CSI. This is a concept behind one type of sleeper based on the material. Correct option is option D, mechanical strength of wooden sleeper. You can see here in this diagram, these are wooden sleepers, and to identify the mechanical strength of these wooden sleepers, we use composite sleeper index. Now let's see the formula. So CSI is given by this formula, S plus 10H by 20. S plus 10H divided by 20. What is capital S? This is the general strength at 12% moisture content of dry timber. Dry timber. So general strength at 12% moisture content. And what is H? H denotes hardness at 12% moisture content. So this is the basic formula for CSI. And minimum CSI for track sleeper is 783. These are some observation by codal provisions. And for crossing sleeper, it shall be 1352, and for bridge sleeper it shall be 1455. So this is how strength of uh, timber sleeper or wooden sleeper is assessed. And let's see more about sleeper density. Sleeper density is given by M plus X. And what is M? M is nothing but the length of a rail. Length of a rail. Broad gauge, for broad gauge, length of a rail will be length of a rail will be 13 meter. For a broad gauge, length of a rail will be 13 meter. So what is small x? X depends on X is a number actually, and it's a function of axle load, speed, type and section of rails, type and strength of sleepers, type of ballast provided, and ballast cushion, and nature of formation. So these are the ballast and the formation. So type of ballast provided, type of formation given, and how much strength in the compaction given, all that depends. All that are depend by x value. So for example, say sleeper density is 13 plus 6. That means per rail section, consider these are some rail section. These two rails has to be joined using some fish plate or something else. So per rail section, 13 plus 6 number of sleepers has to be given. So what is 13 plus 6? 19. So 19 number of sleepers per rail section has to be given. So this is nothing but sleeper index. So just an illustration. So this is a one rail length. One rail length is equal to 13 meter approximately for BG track, broad gauge track. And per rail section, we have to provide 13 plus X. Say for example, X is equal to 6 based on some axle load, ballast formation like this. So in this example, 13 plus X is 19. So 19 numbers of sleepers given per rail section. If the total length of the rail section or track section is given as for example say 50 meters or 100 meters, then how many number of sleeper has to be provided? Like this question will be asked. And how to find the sleeper spacing approximately? By using this formula. Width of sleeper, actually sleeper cross section will be like this. So width of sleeper, here we can find the width of sleeper, and 2 times the depth of sleeper. So this is the depth of sleeper. So this is the width, this is the depth, and with the plus W plus 2D gives the normal spacing between the sleepers. This is how we have to calculate the sleeper spacing and the sleeper density. Now let's move on to third question. That question is based on gradient. The grade compensation for a 4-degree broad gauge track is option A 0.2%, option B 0.16%, option C 0.12 percentage, option D 0.06 percentage. A simple calculation based for broad gauge track is there and is given by IR code, Indian Railways code. We have to follow that to find the grade compensation for BJ track. There is a difference between BJ, MJ and NG. So NG track is narrow gauge, MG track is meter gauge. And here the answer is option B, 0.16 percentage. Let's see how it is calculated. For BG track, broad gauge track, grade compensation shall be 0.04 percentage per degree of curve. So that's why here degree of curve is given as 4 degree. So 4 into 0.04 gives 0.16 percentage as grade compensation. So what about other gauge? If it is given for MG track, meter gauge track, then grade compensation shall be 0.03 percentage per degree. And for NG, narrow gauge track, 0.02 percentage per degree. So what actually is the BG track, broad gauge, when the gauge between the rails is 1.67 meter? And what is meter gauge? In the name itself, we can get nothing but 1.0 meter. The length between the rails, this is the length between the rails calculated inner face, not then the outer face. See, calculated in the inner face, the length is nothing but the gauge. So 1.67 meter, 1.0 meter is for meter gauge, 1.67 meter for broad gauge. And for narrow gauge, it shall be 0.76 meter. So this is the gauge length for BG, MG and NG. And for NG, grade compensation shall be 0.02 percentage per degree. And grade compensation given by another formula also based on the radius of curvature or radius of horizontal curve. So GC equal to 70 by R for broad gauge, GC is equal to 52.5 by R for meter gauge and 35 by R for narrow gauge. And what are the types of gradient? Four types of gradients are there: ruling gradient, pusher gradient, momentum gradient, gradients in station yards. And what is ruling gradient? It is the gradient in which it is determined on the basis of maximum load that a locomotive can haul or can pull with maximum permissible speed. This is the maximum permissible speed with which locomotive can haul the maximum load. So that is the ruling gradient. And what is a pusher gradient? Pusher gradient is nothing but a gradient which is steeper than ruling gradient. So that means what? An extra locomotive will be required for pusher gradient because it is steeper than ruling gradient. So that's why an extra locomotive or an extra engine will be required to pull or to haul the uh, train. And what is momentum gradient? Gradient is again steeper than ruling gradient, and the resistance due to the gradient are overcome by the momentum. So which is gathered while having a run in plane or on falling gradient in valleys. So it uses additional kinetic energy. So additional kinetic energy is used in case of momentum gradient, and which is received during run on a section. And what is gradient in station yards? It is that gradient which has to be provided to drain rainwaters. So if at all no gradient is provided in a station, then rainwater will get stagnated. So that's why gradient in station yard is much needed, so that rainwater will get drained. So what is the desirable maximum value of this gradient? 1 in 400. So for 400-meter run, there should be a rise of 1 meter. So that is nothing but given by 1 in 400. That is, we can get in this theorem. For 400-meter stretch, there is 1 meter rise. So this is how gradient will be visualized. So 1 by 400 is the maximum gradient that has to be provided in station yards. And what is recommended? Recommended shall be 1 in 1 kilometer, or 1 in 1000 we can say. So up to 400 we can provide gradient in station yard. Other or steeper than this will cause train to get pulled out or pushed out in some direction. We have to stop the train in station, right? So that's why gradient should not be more than this. Gradient should not be more than 1 by 400. If at all it is more than 1 by 400, then train will get moved away from the station automatically without causing any external force. And the steepest gradient shall be calculated by grade compensation value. So ruling gradient minus the grade compensation shall be the steepest or maximum allowable gradient in a stretch. So grade compensation is much required for uh, for what? For to resist the gradient, and that resistance is offered by curvature. Now let's move on to fourth question. What is the hauling capacity of locomotive carrying an axle load of 24 tons each? The friction value is given as 0.166. Option A 16.5 tons, option B 16 tons, option C 15.5 tons, option D 17.0 tons. A simple question, you have to calculate hauling capacity of locomotive carrying an axle load of 24 tons each. Note the term each, 24 tons each. So there are many axles. Correct option is option B, 16 tons. Now let's see how it's calculated. Hauling capacity is given by this formula, nu into W into N. Here nu, that is the friction coefficient, is given as 0.166. So the friction coefficient is given as 0.166 into 24 is the axial load per axle load per axle. So how many axles are there? Four axles are there. One, two, and another side two, 1, 2, 3, 4. So four axles will be there. So that's why 16 tons. For example, it is a locomotive denoted by 282 locomotive. Then what it represents? Two bogies are there, 8 central or driving coupled wheels are there, and two rear wheels. Two rear wheels are there. Then how many number of axles? 2 plus 8 plus 2 divided by 2, because in this track one wheel, in this track one wheel, so that's why divided by 2 equals to 6. So 6 number of axles are there in a 282 locomotive. And what is the number of actually driving axles? Actually driving axles is nothing but this one, 8 central or driving or coupled wheels. So this axle is the actual driving axles, and 8 by 2 gives 4. So that's why here we have substituted 4 as the number of axles, or number of pairs of axles, we can say correctly, number of pairs of axles. And what is the curve resistance? When it comes to curve, what is the resistance offered? In case of BG track, it shall be 0.04 percentage of W into D. What is D here? D is the degree of curve. And for meter gauge, it shall be 0.03 percentage of W cross 3. And for narrow gauge, shall be 0.02 percentage of W into D. And there are some terms relating to track resistance, track modulus, track stiffness, and track stability. And what is track modulus? It is nothing but it is defined as load per unit length of rail required to produce a unit depression in the track. So this is the load per unit length of rail that will be required to produce a unit depression. So that is the track modulus. And the, the track modulus depends on what is the type of gauge, and the type of rails, type and density of sleepers, and type and section of ballast and its subgrade. So this will be used to calculate track stresses, and track stresses can be caused due to wheel loads, dynamic effect, horizontal thrust, and various factors that will be impacted in a track. Now let's see fifth question. Which of the following pairs are correctly matched? Option A. Heel divergence is defined as the distance between running faces of stalk rail and gauge faces of tongue rail measured at heel of switch. Refer this diagram to get to know what is stalk rail, gauge rails, sorry, gauge faces of tongue rails. So stalk rails, tongue rail. So you can get in this diagram. Option B is for flange way clearance, distance between adjacent face of running faces of running rail and check rail. So here you can see the check rail, here you can see the running rail. Option C, throw off switch is nothing but the distance through which the toe of the tongue rail moves sideways. Option D, angle between running faces of stalk rail and tongue rail. So this is an MSQ type question. More than one option shall be correct. So what is correctly matched? What are correct? So all options are correct. That means all are perfectly matched. Heel divergence is defined by this. So flange way clearance, throw off switch, switch angle. So let's see more about it. Throw off switch for broad gauge track shall be 9.5 cm. This is as per IR code, Indian Railways. And for meter gauge or narrow gauge, it shall be 8.9 cm. When thickness of tongue rails at toe is T, for example, this is how tongue rail gets narrowed out when there is points and crossings. So for example, say tongue rail. Here is the tongue rail. Here is the pointing out. This is the toe of tongue rail. So when toe of tongue rail gets narrowed out like this, that means T at toe is 0. When narrowed out like this, T is equal to 0. When it is not narrowed out, it is just bluntly it is there. Then T shall be some value. So that's why narrow tongue rails at toe is denoted as some T value. Then what is the switch angle? Switch angle is given by sine inverse of D minus T by S. What is D? D is heel divergence. And what is T? T is the thickness of tongue rails at toe. This is the toe. You can see here clearly. This is the toe. At the toe, what is the thickness? And by using that value, we can find the angle of switch. And there are some other terms or some other terms involved in points and crossings. One is flare, stretcher bar, heel block, sliding plates, etc. So what is flare? Flare is nothing but this. This is known as flare. Some tapering out, right? Some tapered out here and here. So this is called as flare. So we can see in this diagram clearly. This is called flare. This is called flares. And in the check rail, actually, the flare will be presented in check rails at the ends. At their ends, the flare will be found. The theoretical length of tongue rail shall be found by using this formula. S is equal to R tan alpha by 2. So this is the tongue rail. This is the tongue rail. The length of this tongue rail is nothing but R into tan alpha by 2. R is nothing but radius of horizontal curve. Now let's move on to sixth question. A railway curve of 1350 meter radius is to be set out to connect two tangents. So what is two tangents actually? Connecting a transition curve. That means that if the design speed is 110 km per hour and the rate of change of acceleration is 0.3 meter per second square, the shift of this circular curve will be nearly. So what is the shift of circular curve? So this is actually based on the highway engineering also. The same approach will be followed in highway engineering also. So what is the shift of the circular curve given by? Based on the transition curve's length, we have to calculate the shift. So here the answer is option B, 0.16 meter. Now let's see how it is calculated. First we have to calculate the length of transition curve by using this formula, VQ by CR. V is nothing but the speed in meter per seconds actually. So this has to be converted into meter per seconds. And CR. C is nothing but rate of change of acceleration. Actually, this is radial acceleration, and that is given as 0.3 meter per second square. So C is zero point 0.3 and R is 1350. Substituting all the three values, we get the answer for length of transition curve as 70.41 meter. Now we have to calculate the shift value. Shift value is given by this formula LT square divided by 24R. So LT nothing but 70.41. So 70.41 square divided by 24 into 1350. That gives 0.16 meter as the shift of circular curve. So let's see more about it. Actually, what is shift? We can see in this diagram. Shift is here. So this dotted lines is the actual circular curve. But to merge that circular curve with the transition curve, this is the transition curve. To merge that circular curve with the transition curve, we have to shift that circular curve inwards. So how much amount we have to shift so that that curve will get intersected with transition curve? That is nothing but shift. The amount by which the circular curve is shifted inwards so as to meet a transition curve. So to meet the transition curve here, we have to shift the circular curve inwards by using shift formula. Now let's see more about widening of curves. So why widening of gauge? Widening of gauge on curves is needed because this you can see here in this diagram. If the gauge is not widened, then the flange will get moved away from the track. If the gauge is widened, the flange will be in correct position actually. So that's why widening of a gauge in curves is needed. So how to calculate that widening? We have to use this formula. W is equal to 13 into B plus L the whole square. 13 into B plus L the whole square by R. B is nothing but length of wheelbase. So length of wheelbase actually is the wheel B. So this is the length of a wheelbase. So that is nothing but 6 meter for broad gauge. 6 meter for broad gauge track, and it shall be 4.88 meter for other MG and NG tracks. So yeah, for MG track it will be B value shall be 4.88. And what is capital L? It is given by this formula. This is nothing but lap of flange. Lap of flange. And what is H, small h? This is the depth of flange below the rail. So this is the value of H. So depth of flange below the rail actually. So this is the depth of flange. And what is capital D? Diameter of wheel dia. Wheel dia is the capital D. So this is how we have to calculate the widening. Why widening is provided? When centrifugal force tries to take the wheel in outward direction. So to avoid that, widening of uh, track, widening of gauge on curves is provided. So that rigidity of wheelbase and relative distance traveled by wheels get corrected in the correct position. Now let's move to seventh question. Seventh question, a transition curve is to be provided for a circular railway curve 300-meter radius. The gauge provided is broad gauge with the maximum cant. Cant is nothing but super elevation, that is 15 centimeter. What is the length of transition curve for balancing this centrifugal force? So this is completely based on geometric design of railway track and curve calculation, transition curve. So we have to calculate the length of transition curve. In the previous problem also, it was based on the transition curve. In this problem also, it is based on transition curve. So the correct option is option A, 72.71 meters. Now let's see how it's calculated. By using Martin's, actually the length of transition curve is given as this 0.073 into E into V max. So in this formula we have to find the maximum speed. So maximum speed is found by using Martin's formula. So that is given as V max is equal to 4.35, V max is equal to 4.35 root of R minus 67 in case of broad gauge. So point to be noted is broad gauge. So in case of broad gauge, V max is equal to 4.35 root of R minus 67. And substituting all the things, nothing, only the radius. R is equal to 300. So 300 minus 67 whole root into 4.35 gives answer as 66.4 kilometer per hour. And on substituting that 66.4 kilometer per hour directly here and E as 15 centimeter, we get length of transition curve in meters as 72.71 meters for this problem. So this is how we have to calculate the length of transition curve. Now let's see more about it. Transition curve length shall be the maximum of these three criteria. One is 7.2 into E, another one is 0.073 D into Vmax, another one is 0.073 into E into Vmax. Here in this problem we have assumed only this formula because they have given cant value and Vmax shall be found by using Martin's formula. If at all they give D, that is degree of curve also, then we have to use this formula also. So maximum of these three will give the answer for length of transition curve. Now let's see other formulas for Martin's formula with respect to the gauge. For narrow gauge, speed maximum speed as per Martin's formula is 3.65 root of R minus 6. And if transition curve not at all existing, then we shall be 4 by 5th of this Vmax. So speed of the train shall be 4 by 5th, or we can say 0.8 times or 80 percentage of the Vmax calculated in these formulas. And what about high speed trains? For high speed trains alone, V shall be, that is speed shall be 4.58 times root R. So this is how we have to calculate the speed of high speed trains. These are as per Martin's formula and as per Indian Railways codal provisions. These three formulas are achieved. These three formulas are followed to find the speed of train. So V is equal to 0.27 root of CA plus CD R. So what is CA and what is CD? CA is the actual cant provided. What is cant? Cant is the super elevation. And CD is the cant deficiency. So these three formulas with respect to gauge values. For broad gauge this one, meter gauge this one, narrow gauge this 3.65 into R minus 6. So for narrow gauge formula is not changed. This is as like as Martin's formula only. Only for broad gauge and meter gauge it shall be based on cant values. And the maximum cant deficiency, that is CD value, shall be 75 mm for broad gauge, 50 mm for meter gauge and 40 mm for narrow gauge. So these are some important points and formulas regarding design speed for railways. Now let's move to 8th question. Versine of curve is given by. So this is the versine. So what is the formula for versine? Versine of curve. V is equal to c square by r, c square by 2r, c square by 8r, c square by 4r. So what is the correct formula to find the versine of a curve? Versine is nothing but 1 minus cos theta. So how it will be arrived? What is the correct formula? Option C is the right answer. V is equal to c square by 8. Now let's see more about it. Degree of curve is given by 1720 by R when we use 30-meter chord. So this is the chord AB. So this is the chord length we use in railways is 30-meter chord. That is nothing but 30-meter chain. 30-meter chain we are using for surveying. So when we use 30-meter chain, so chord will be 30 meter. So degree of curve shall be 1720 by R. R is the radius. And what is super elevation formula? GV square by GR. And G is nothing but the gauge length. For broad gauge it shall be 1.676. V is nothing but velocity or speed of train. So gv square by zr. Yeah, maximum super elevation shall be 1/10 of gauge. 1/10 of gauge. These are as per the codal provisions. And what is cant deficiency? Cant deficiency is nothing but cant for high speed train minus the actual cant. What is actual cant? A normal speed train. Normal or average speed of trains in that track stretch. In that track stretch, what is the average speed of trains? So that is the average speed of trains. For that, what is the cant needed? So that is nothing but CA. And for a high speed train, one cant is needed, and difference between these two things is nothing but cant deficiency, and theoretical cant is given by Ca plus Cd. Ca plus Cd is nothing but cant deficiency. So these are some important points regarding superillusion. And with respect to Versine is nothing but 1 minus cos theta. Actually this is cos theta. Then what is this? 1 minus cos theta. So Versine is given by c square by 8r. That's it. C is nothing but length of cord. Length of cord. Here in the railways we are using 30-meter chain. So that's why cord length is 30 meter. So C square by 8r. Now let's move on to ninth question. If 8-degree curved track diverges from a main track. So this is the diverging track. 8-degree curved track diverges from a main track of 5 degree. So main track has 5 degree and diverging track has 80 in an opposite direction in a layout of BG yard. So broad gauge. The super elevation on the branch line if maximum speed of main line is 45. So in main line maximum speed is 45. Then what will be the speed in branch line with respect to the cant values? So the super elevation of the branch line if maximum speed on main line is 45 km/h. We have to find the cant for branch line. Cant, or we can call that as super elevation. So the correct option is option A, minus 0.18 centimeter. It is nothing but negative cant we have to provide for branch line. How it is calculated? So super elevation is given by using this formula we have seen in the last question itself. E is equal to gv square by gr. On substituting g as 1.676, v as what? 45 km per hour. Actually 45 into 5 by 18, that gives meter per second. So that we have to substitute here, divided by 9.81 into r. R is nothing but radius of curve. Here 5 degree. So 5 degree radius. So what is the radius? So 5 degree is the degree. So what is the radius? 1720. So on substituting the radius value, we get the answer for E, that is cant value. Then how to find the branch cant? By using the cant efficiency value. For cant efficiency for BG track, it shall be 75 mm, that is something but 7.5 centimeter. Then cant for main track is 7.78 minus 7.5. So cant for main track is 0.18 centimeter. Then the same amount of negative cant shall be provided in branch line. Negative cant will be provided in branch line. So what is that negative cant? When main line is on a curve and branch line takes off from a main line with a curve which is in contrary flexure to the main line. So these are can be visualized in this diagram itself. The outer rail of the branch line instead of being rails. So this is the outer rail of branch line. This is the inner rail of branch line. So when the outer rail of the branch line instead of being actually raised, we have to lower than the inner rail. So how much amount it shall be lower than the inner rail? That is nothing but negative cant. So minus 0.18 centimeter amount of amount that has to be remain lower than the inner rail. So this is how we have to calculate the negative cant for branch line. When main line is on a curve and branch line takes off from the main line. Already main line is on a curve. Main line is not straight. Main line is not straight. Already main line is on curve. and in the curve branch line takes off. When this scenario happens, we have to provide negative cant. Negative cant is nothing but some value, negative elevation we have to provide lower than the inner right. Now let's see the last question. Last question is based on semaphore signal. At normal position, semaphore signal represents proceed with caution, stop, proceed with confidence, diversion ahead. So we can see in this diagram itself to get the answer. At the normal position, semaphore signal represents what? Whether it is stop or proceed or caution, anything. So answer is obviously stop. This is the normal position. So to show the stop position of any failure that happens to be in the apparatus, this is follow. Both the arms are horizontal. Both the arms are horizontal. That means it represents stop. When both are lowered like this, when both are lowered, then the track is clear enough to get proceeded. So you can, so the loco pilot can proceed with high confidence because the track is very clear. No trains are coming or going. And when top arm is lowered, but this Warner signal is not lowered. It is in a horizontal position. Then the loco pilot has to proceed with caution because some train may cross. That's why uh, Warner signal is provided. So Warner is horizontal, semaphore is lowered. Then proceed with caution. So these are some important notations behind semaphore signal. So we are at the end of this video. If you like the video, please like, comment, share. Thank you.